Good afternoon, Rosie.
Good afternoon.
Um, I I was going to say it's a real pleasure to talk to you today. Even though we were just saying that I wish I didn't have to talk to you because it's going to be about uh, the genocide in Gaza. Um, but saying so, and I know you probably do not really like this, but people like you and people like my friend Tanya Hajassan and others that have been to Gaza in the last 2 years. Um, I've been and people like also some of my friends out on the boat and the flotilla and uh, are really inspirations. I think for all of us. So it's really an honor to talk to you today. Um, and I'm going to start now asking questions. You were in Gaza, I think, what, a week ago, or just like 9, 10 days ago.
Um, we left on the. Let me have a look at the calendar. Actually, it's something. I believe we got back on the fourth. I got back to the UK.
Okay, so yeah, just over like a week ago, really. And I think if I correct me if I'm wrong, but since the start of the genocide, you have been to Gaza 3 times, correct?
Yes, I've been in the march to the European Gaza in August to Nasser, and then we tried to get in February of this year, and we got denied.
Hmm.
And so we spent a week in Oman, which was not very nice. And then then we went for May.
So like, what's changed in a way from one visit to another? And sorry, because when was your first visit? Was it so? It was in 2024, I
March
guess. Yeah.
2024 was my first visit, yeah. The
Okay.
charity got in the December 23, so Graham and Basil and Andy got and Ahmed got in December 2023. And then we sent another mission in the January and then another mission in the February, and then I went in the March.
So yeah, what's changed in a way from one visit to another? What's sort of what was different? What maybe surprised you or shocked you or
I think there's a couple of things that change every time we go. One is the landscape. So when we went in the March, it was bits of Khan Yunis that I recognised still. I sort of knew where I was outside the hospital. Um, when I went in the August, it was like a moonscape. Everything had been flattened. And as we drove to Nasser, I didn't recognise any of the streets. In fact, I didn't even recognise Nasser when we got up to it because it just looked so different. Everything around it had been destroyed and there were just piles of rubble everywhere. Not much more, there's not really much more to destroy, but not much of the landscape had changed between the August and the May this year. But there is a lot of destruction in Gaza. There's a few bits of Deir al-Balah still as I remember them, but the rest of it is just rubble, really. The other thing that changed is the I suppose the stock in the hospital and the sort of capability of the hospital. So in March of 2024, we took so much kit with us because we entered through Egypt and there was no restriction. So we had a lot of disposable items with us, and we certainly stocked plastic surgery for the entire time we were there. We very rarely used any of the equipment at the hospital, apart from their instruments. Um, then when we went in the August, we were very short on things, and we were starting that whole scrap heap challenge where we would water down the antiseptic solutions, and we were using gowns as drapes, and we were re-sterilizing dermatome blades. And so it started to feel like we were running out of stuff. And then in this time it was dire. I mean, we had nothing. We were at the point of we had no blades for our scalpels. We had no gloves. We really were running out of everything left, right, and centre. And the worst was the antibiotics. We were down to 3 types of antibiotics, none of which would be the first line choice in dirty wounds that we were seeing. We were out of intravenous analgesic agents, so everybody was screaming their head off in recovery. I mean, it was really dire what we would run out of. And then the third thing is the sort of state of the population, really. When we went in the March, it was 6 months into the war, and people were displaced and were living in the hospital, and it was busy, but it still felt like people were coping, even though they were living behind bits of carpet and blankets and had mattresses on the floor in the corridors. Life was still going on. There was a bakery that had set up outside the hospital. There was a couple of barber shops within the hospital. People were still functioning. In the August, everybody had been displaced to Amawasi, and it was jammed. It was tense everywhere. And to do the 2.5 mile journey from where we were staying to Nasa took 30 minutes in a car, because you had to wait for you were moving at a walking pace, and you had to wait for people to disperse, and everybody was on the streets. People were walking every morning when we left to go and collect water from the water stations. Everyone was sort of buying food hand to mouth, because there's no food storage, so you buy what you're going to eat on the day. It was difficult. There was no sort of sanitation, so people were using the toilet blocks that ICRC had built. It was just really cramped, and although everyone was surviving, it was harder, and everybody looked like it was harder. And then this time, I mean, it's just it seems as if everyone's just given up, really. It seems as if there's just no life behind anyone's eyes. Everyone says to you that they'd rather be dead. Everyone's really thin. They've all lost weight. And it's sort of 5 to 10 kilos. It's a really significant amount of weight. Lots of people that we know have lost relatives now. I mean, everyone you speak to has had a loss in their family. We've obviously lost friends along the way as well, since the first time we got in after the war. It's a really dire situation. There's not enough food. There's not enough water. And it's really showing now.
Yeah, I feel like when I was speaking to my friend Iman Marifi, who was a doctor also, who's been to Gaza, but last year, like nearly a year ago now, she was already saying a year ago that she felt that whatever she was bringing in terms of medical equipment wasn't what was really needed. What was needed was mostly psychological care, because people were completely depressed. And I also remember years back during Operation Cast Lead in 2008 and 2009, there was a study by the British Medical Journal which said that I think more than half of the under 16, which is a huge amount of people in Gaza, had lost the will to live. And this was in 2008, 2009. So did you feel, like, could you do anything, like, psychologically to kind of support them, or you were just too busy just, looking after people?
I think turning up was a massive support for my immediate colleagues, so the doctors and nurses that I know there, just actually being there. And so many people were pleased to see me and couldn't believe that we'd come back. And it was nice to tell them that we were supporting them, that we were still behind them, that we were trying to get the message out. And I think that gave them a little bit of comfort. Also, just being another pair of hands so that people can, take a break. And I would say to my colleagues, look, don't worry, I can do this. I don't need you. Just sit down, have a cup of tea or whatever. And that also is some respite from the situation. But with regard to the patients, no, there's not time. I mean, there's not time to see them all, let alone enter into psychological assessment of them all. What's very noticeable, however, is the lack of Western or international doctors that are in Gaza, mainly because they've been denied entry by COGAT. But when we were in for that month in August, we had a Norwegian psychologist with us, Katrina, and she was amazing. And she would come into the hospital every day and do play therapy with the children. And it made a huge difference to have her on board and to be able to see a patient and say, I'm really worried about them. You know, they've been with me for a week now. They don't seem to be responding to treatment. And then she would see them, and then there would be a little glimmer of change in their condition. And it's very sad now that all of that psychological support has gone, that there aren't the psychologists in at the moment because they can't get in.
Do you know how many hospitals are still functioning in Gaza?
Well, we have a very different definition of hospital. So when the WHO and United Nations say that Gaza has 38 hospitals, I don't ever believe that Gaza has had 38 hospitals. Some of the facilities that they include are physiotherapy units and eye hospitals, maternity hospitals. So these are hospitals that can deliver one thing, but these were never hospitals that could cope with mass trauma on the scale that we're seeing now. And right now, as of today, the only hospital in Gaza that can deal with mass trauma is Al-Aqsa, because Nasser has just been evacuated.
And during your stay, your last stay, who were your patients? Were they mainly kids, adults, a mix of both?
60% under 15. And we would always start with those on the list. We had a list of 10 to 12. There was always at least 5 to 6 children on the list every day. There were a mix then of males and females. We didn't see so many elderly patients, but we saw the odd one or two. But yeah, it's a real different demographic. I couldn't say it was men of the age of 20 to 40. It definitely wasn't. We would see entire families come in, and on one list 4 people would have the same surname, and then you would discuss the cases and realize that they were a family that had all been in the same tent that had been hit. So it seemed to be very, very much all ages, all walks of life. We had pregnant women, we had little babies, we had a 3-month-old with a burn. We had, a real range of people in.
And what were they suffering from? Was it due to the bombing? Was it illnesses? Was it infections?
Well, so I just do trauma. I'm a plastic reconstructive surgeon. So everyone that has a wound is referred to me. So I see mainly soft tissue injuries. So everyone I saw every day had been involved in some form of explosive attack, a bomb, a blast. The majority were direct hits onto the body, so people missing an arm, a leg, a bit of the body, the knee gone, a bit of the cheek missing. So actual bits had been blown off them. Then there were people that had been burnt in the heat of the explosion, so we saw a lot of those, and that was children and adults. So we had a couple of toddlers, we had a 3-year-old, we had a 2-year-old with blast burns, and then we had sort of adults, 40, 50-year-olds. We had a 45-year-old guy with a 70% burn from a blast. And those are sort of injuries that are fairly unsurvivable in the United Kingdom. So in Gaza, it's pretty tricky to keep somebody alive or get them back to functioning health after an injury like that. And then we had a few shrapnel injuries. So obviously, rather than having a bit blown off you, in the explosion, something gets whipped up and ejected at a very high speed and hits you like a missile, and that will break normally a bone and take out a chunk of the overlying skin and embed into you. So we would remove bits of, clothing and rubble from embedded into people. And then towards the end of this trip, we had the gunshot wounds from the Gazan Humanitarian Fund fiascos. So we started to see gunshot wounds again.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you're saying we started seeing gunshot wounds again. What do you mean by
Yes.
that?
I think in the August I didn't see so many gunshot wounds. In the March we saw gunshot wounds, but we mainly saw children being hit by quadcopter, so drones that have firepower capability firing. And for some reason, I think that the children in March were still fascinated by the drones and became easy targets. So we had a lot of gunshots from drones on kids. In the August, we saw a smattering of gunshot, but not many. I can recall a guy that had taken an injury to his shoulder and blown the back of his shoulder off. A couple of other sort of gunshots, but not many. But after the GHF incidents, we started to see that a large proportion of what we were dealing with started to become gunshot wounds.
And you were saying that the children were fascinated, at least a few
I think
months ago.
initially,
Yeah, by the quadcopters, and you were saying they became easy targets. So would you say that children were intentionally targeted from your experience?
I don't know, because I don't know what their strategy is, but it's very difficult to believe that it's a strategy to take out a terrorist organization and that all these other people are just innocent bystanders, because that all these people were standing bloody close if they were. And that would mean that there are a huge number of Hamas all over Gaza. It sort of doesn't add up, really, that it's just innocent bystanders being targeted. There's just too many of them to not be part of the main aim. And the stories, I suppose, that we hear that that the place is hit because they think Hamas is there. I mean, Hamas must be in every single infrastructure in Gaza now, because they've wiped it out. There isn't much. There aren't many buildings standing, and that in itself is difficult to believe that there is that many. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on warfare or Hamas. I mean, maybe there are millions of them, but we certainly didn't see it like that. The people that came in that we were treating looked like civilians, looked like family of six. 4 children would come in with the grandmother or the mother or aunts. They were all they looked like families. And I suppose we never really saw anyone in a military uniform. I never treated anyone in combat gear. I never saw anyone come into the hospital with an AK-47 slung over their shoulder. I didn't see in the hospital evidence that anywhere was being used as a base for the organization of anything other than medical issues. So everyone that you met in meetings, it was discussions about the state of the field hospitals, the number of patients we had in ITU, the state of the oxygen station. It was all kind of those discussions that were being had in the clinical areas. I didn't hear or see anything else going on.
What would you say? You were saying that people in Gaza were so happy to see you again, and I guess to see other sort of international doctors. And what, like, when you leave Gaza, or when you're about to leave, what do they tell you? Do they give you a message to the world? What do they want? What do they need?
This time they were quite keen that we continued the media debacle that we started while we were in, which was very unintentional. But I think once that gathered momentum and people started seeing footage that we'd taken and things that we were saying on Instagram, everybody started sending us updates as to what was happening. And I felt like I was the center of news in Gaza, because, you know, I would receive videos of people running away at the GHF distribution points on the day it was happening, because somebody would video it and then somebody else would say, well, send it to her, she'll put it on social media. And I think we had a lot of that. It's difficult to sort of say, you know, wholeheartedly that people were. I think really they just wanted us to get the message out there that what was happening. They still have a belief that the world doesn't see all the stuff that they're posting, which is really sad. But that's still, you know, they still have this worry that everything that goes out from Palestine is denied by Israel and therefore discounted by the West, and that somehow we're not seeing it, and that's why we're not helping. Because the question you're asked all the time is, why isn't anyone doing anything? You know, why aren't we? Why isn't anyone stopping this? Why isn't anyone getting the aid to us? Why is this happening? And I think for the first part of this war, the people of Palestine believed it was because we couldn't see it. I think now they know we see it. We're just doing nothing.
Yeah, it's terrible. I can't. So I guess it sort of brings them some kind of utter loneliness. And do they really feel now they've understood that? No, actually, they are seeing it. The UK government knows, the French government knows, but they're not doing anything. Does it create, I mean, some kind of, I guess, despair, right?
Yeah, and a bit of futility into what we're doing. You know, we're patching up small children that are probably just going to get shot and bombed again. I mean, there is a lot of that conversation in the operating rooms. There's a lot of people that, as I said, you know, say to me they would rather be dead than carry on. So we have descended to a level that I've never seen the Palestinians at. And obviously they have that reputation for this incredible resilience with what they've put up with. But they've got no resilience left now. Nothing. It's empty.
Would you go back if you were given the chance? And I mean, I wanted to talk to you also about the humanity of Gaza, the beauty of Gaza, but I think we, unfortunately, you know, the humanity, I'm sure, is still there, but the beauty of Gaza is gone. But yeah, would you go back if you were given the opportunity?
If I was given the opportunity to go back, I would definitely go back. I tell everyone when I leave that I'll see them again. And I do believe that I will see them again, because I have to. Because if I for 1 minute let that thought go, then all of this seems very futile. I do want to go back. I can't. There's lots of things at the moment I can't go back right now because I've used all my annual leave, despite what people say on Twitter and all the rest of it. I'm not paid to go, and I have to do this in my annual leave, and I only get 6 weeks a year. And when I spend 4 weeks in Gaza, I don't have a lot left. So I have no annual leave now, so I can't go until that ticks over into next summer. So that's the first reason I can't go. The second is going to be COGAT, really, and whether or not they will allow me entry. The United Nations and the WHO, I'm certain, will give me a seat on the convoy, but I think that COGAT are very likely to probably ban me next time I try and enter.
I guess because of how vocal and you've been, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a conscious decision, really. I think we made a conscious decision. We sort of knew what we were seeing, and we all of us felt we had to just say what we saw, and we knew as soon as we did it, we knew we wouldn't get back in.
Thank you, Rosie. Thanks.
Not at all. Thanks very much.